The US is closely watching Russia's moves in the Arctic, where economic riches are attracting military interest. That's according to Washington's top diplomat.
The potential there is already there for a global race to exploit the resources of the region.
RT's Yegor Piskunov was listening in on John Kerry's speech and has more for us now.
Well, first of all, let's look at this potential. The total amount of resources, the estimated amount that it's believed that the Arctic contains is quite impressive. We're looking at about 13% of global oil reserves, or 1/3 of the world's gas reserves. And judging by what the U.S. Secretary of State said, perhaps not only the potential is already there. He was talking about how Russia planted a flag on a part of the Arctic Sea, the continental shelf that Russia says is a part of its territory. He was also talking about how China has been very active recently in the Arctic region, developing gas, oil, and fishing there as well. The question is, do these announcements coming from Mr. Kerry, do they mean that the United States may be looking at joining this possible race? And if so, then to what extent? Let's listen to what Mr. Kerry had to say.
Economic riches tend to attract military interest as nations seek to ensure their own rights are protected.
Well, actually, Washington has been a bit more diplomatic previously. We'll just listen to what Mr. Obama said about the Arctic region just last August.
To all the foreign dignitaries who are here, I want to be very clear. We are eager to work with your nations on the unique opportunities that the Arctic presents and the unique challenges that it faces.
So the rhetoric is quite different, but frankly, words are words and action is action. And even before that statement by the U.S. president, Washington took part in large military drills with other NATO countries in the Arctic region. Well, judging by the impressive amounts of the resources which are believed to be contained in the Arctic, I think it's pretty fair to expect that global interest to that region will only grow in the future, and it's very unlikely that the United States will be willing to miss out on a piece of that pie.
Well, for more on this, let's now cross live to James Carden. He's the executive editor for the American Committee for East-West Accord. James, great to have you with us today. So John Kerry there talking about economic riches tending to attract military interests. That's, of course, in reference to the Arctic. What can that statement tell us, really, about U.S. intentions in the region?
I'm not sure it could tell us very much. It seems to me that if Mr. Kerry is implying that the U.S. ought to get into a sort of energy race in the Arctic, that doesn't seem to me to be a particularly wise policy, given the fact that we are, compared to Russia, very, very far behind. Russia possesses, I believe, 27 icebreakers. We have one, which is about 40 years old. So I don't really suspect that the U.S. has the wherewithal to compete with Russia over energy resources in the Arctic, nor do I think we should.
And you mentioned a competition there. Obviously, that's also something that John Kerry mentioned. He said there's a potential here for a global race in the Arctic, obviously, between these various great powers, potential being the key word there. Is that only a potential, or has this race really already started? I mean, we've seen increased activity from various countries in the region. Is there a new Arctic race perhaps on the horizon?
No, I don't believe that there is. In order for there to be a competition, there has to be a sort of equality between the sides. And as I just mentioned, Russia is so far ahead of the United States in the Arctic. The idea of a competition or a new, race to conquer the Arctic, it simply doesn't exist. I mean, let me put it to you this way: the United States is an Arctic nation only by virtue of Alaska. Alaska has a population of slightly over 700,000 people. We're a nation of 320 million people. So the idea that the United States is actually an Arctic nation strikes many of us, at least from where I sit in the New York suburbs, as quite as quite interesting. So no, I don't believe that there's going to be a competition.
Sure, and of course, Mr. Kerry mentioned that the economic riches in the Arctic. We're hearing reports, almost monthly about potential for great natural resources to be exploited in the region. What do you see in store, really, for the Arctic's future in the coming years and decades?
Well, Kerry's comments, I think, should trouble some of the administration's supporters because the president just made, I think, a very courageous decision to not pursue the Keystone oil pipeline that would run oil from Canada through the United States. And it seemed to me that that was a particularly good step in the fight against climate change. It seems to me sort of a paradox then that Mr. Kerry the State Department is now pivoting and suddenly concerned with natural resource extraction when the president just KO'd the Keystone pipeline.
There certainly seems to be a lot of different opinions from those figures in the U.S. administration, but we'll see what happens in the next months and years. James, thanks so much for joining us here on our International. Great to get your input on this.
Pleasure. Thank you.